So last night, with the help of Customs and Border Patrol, we arrested Jeffrey Knight, the operator of the 37-foot vessel that struck the Clearwater Ferry on April 27th. Mr. Knight was charged with 8 counts of leaving the scene of an accident involving serious bodily injury and death, 1 count for deceased victim, and 7 counts for each injured individual that required medical treatment beyond first aid. Mr. Knight will additionally be charged with violating navigation rules to include failure to maintain a proper lookout and failure to maintain a safe speed. The ferry boat captain, Denise Kimmerer, has been charged with violating a navigation rule for failing to have a working stern light at the time of the accident. Once we obtained enough evidence to charge Mr. Knight with leaving the scene of an accident, we learned he was in the Bahamas. We worked with Mr. Knight's attorney to have him fly back to the United States, where we took him into custody at the Clearwater Airport without incident. He was then booked into Pinellas County Jail, where his bond was set at $40,000. Our hearts go out to all those affected by this tragic accident, especially the family of Jose Castro. Our hope is that the conclusion of this investigation can be the first step in bringing closure and justice to his family and all those affected by this event. We appreciate the collaborative effort with the Clearwater Police Department, United States Coast Guard, Pinellas County State Attorney's Office, and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office on this investigation. Our investigative team did a complete and thorough job and allowed the facts and evidence to lead this investigation. At this point, to go into more specific details about the investigation, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Matt Della Rosa.
Hey, good afternoon. It's Captain Matt Della Rosa, D-A-L-L-A-R-O-S-A. Just wanted to cover some of our investigative efforts. I know I spoke with everybody in this room about 3 months ago or so when this event first occurred. There was a lot of questions that were swirling around about what was happening and what may come of that. And today's kind of that day where we get to talk about what was done, the exhaustive efforts that were put out. So I want to make sure that we address that. Our team did a unbelievably great job trying to pull a mountain of evidence together for this case. You can imagine there was numerous witness interviews that had to be completed. We cataloged about 48 witness interviews in total, which encompassed a lot of the people that were on board both of those vessels, as well as another 50 or so interview follow-ups for associated businesses, for attempts to pull video footage, all those kind of things with associated public safety agencies to pull all of this together. So our investigative team had hours and hours and hours of time put in with volumes of data to pull all this together. We conducted a reconstruction on both vessels completely, mapping it with some sophisticated technology and then reconstructing some of those crash sites digitally. We also conducted a reconstruction in reality where we were able to test drive the vessel that was in question so that we could understand the dynamics of it completely, do a complete functionality check. All of that was required so that we could conduct a thorough investigation and to be confident with the charges that we ultimately presented to the Pinellas County State Attorney's Office, which has ultimately brought us to where we are today. So I just want to commend that investigative team, which was made up of a bunch of different people from FWC, a lot of other agencies. All of it led to a very successful investigation that was fact-based, that was led by the evidence that we had, facts that we could stand on and prove so that we had a clear, competent case that could be filed with everything that was at hand. So with that, I will open it to some of those questions, but I do want to talk about what the case itself presented.
Can I ask you specifically about that aft light? Because Mr. Knight had earlier claimed that the aft light was not functional. So let me ask you a couple of different questions about that. Number one, how are you able to determine that the aft light was not functional given the damage to the boat and the way that happened? Number two, does that absolve Mr. Knight of any responsibility on the waterway for what occurred that night?
So I'll answer that for sort of simply. I don't want to litigate the entire case here. The Pinellas County State Attorney's Office can be referred to for some of that stuff in terms of how the case will be litigated. Factually speaking, Mr. Kimmerer was charged as the captain of that vessel for not having that light present at the time of the event. That fact has been documented, and that's what those charges were for.
Will Mr. Knight be required to wear an ankle monitor while he's out on
Yeah,
watch?
again, that'll be up to the findings from the judge that once they decide what his terms of his release will be.
We had some people reach out to us saying the investigation appears to have taken a long time. Can you speak to that? I know you said you were gathering evidence and trying to make sure you had facts. Can you speak to that part of it?
Sure. Relatively speaking, this was a fairly expeditious event for us. Boating accident investigation, I talked about it in this room about 3 months ago, takes a long time. Car accident reconstruction is difficult. Boating accidents present a larger challenge. Everything sinks to the bottom. Evidence isn't readily available. You can't analyze skid marks the same way on a roadway. A lot of times we'll see a roadway closed for 7-8 hours where it's evaluated heavily for a vehicle accident. We don't have that luxury when it comes to boats. So we have to kind of build this stuff back in a different way. We got to build a complete chronology, not just of the seconds that actually led up to the accident, but even the hours and days that preceded that. We have to do significant functionality testing. We did a complete GPS forensic analysis on the GPSs that were available for all the vessels that were there. We did a lot of electrical testing, like the light that was in question, to ensure that we could understand what was and was not functioning at the time of the event. Same would be true for any kind of radar equipment. All of that has to be put together so that we can present a complete chronology of the event itself and be confident with what did occur and then apply our charges as appropriate.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about his vessel in particular? Did you find any evidence the night of the accident that his boat was A, taking on water, and B, did it have a functional radar system on that would have indicated where the ferry was to Mr. Knight if he were looking at it?
Right, so piecing that apart, the functionality test for us revealed that the radar system was not functioning. We did not find any water intrusion or any significant issues that would have limited the vessel's capability to remain in place that night.
Now, Mr. Knight said that he stayed on scene for a period of time. Can you speak to that period of time in which he left and how these charges resulted from that?
Absolutely. So the charges themselves are for the leaving the scene. I know that question's been raised. What were these charges actually for? The charges were for leaving the scene of the accident, which resulted in death and the injury to the individuals that were there. Mr. Knight did remain on scene, and again, I'm not going to litigate the entire case. He did remain on scene for a period of time, but our evidence revealed, and a lot of 911 call evidence revealed, that there was a significant change in the demeanor of what was occurring, and there was an attempt to leave the scene, which was then tracked down. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office ultimately stopped Mr. Knight a good distance from the scene, and the discussion he had with those deputies did not indicate any desire to remain at the scene, and that's what led us to the charges we have today.
When you say change in demeanor, is that what you're talking about, or describe Mr. Knight's change in demeanor over this?
Again, I don't want to litigate it all the way through, but there was a period of time where his vessel and the crew stayed on scene. There were some 911 calls made, but then that 911 call, as it progresses, you can hear a voice that says, I don't want you to say anything. There's a lot of things that are being caught on that 911 call. So with that, we felt there was a significant change in an attempt to not stay. When you add that to what the Pinellas County State Sheriff's Office encountered, there was no attempt to actually complete the exchange of information, rendering all the aid that's possible, as well as if you're looking for the ability of emergency services, all of that would have been at the scene. There was no need to actually leave the scene itself.
You think we'd be here today having a press conference if you just taken responsibility from the start?
I don't want to get into the what ifs. We have the facts that we are, and we filed our charges based on those facts.
Now, that search warrant, I remember it saying that he was telling passengers on his boat to not call 911 or people to not call 911. Do you see any possibility of future charges stemming from that or anything to do with that topic?
I feel confident with the charges that we filed. They're fully fact-based. They're based on the chronology we built, and we'll stand behind the case that we filed.
Was Mr. Knight complicit with law enforcement throughout this 3-month period? It's kind of a long period.
Yeah, so during that 3-month period, I know that question's come up of what was going on, why hasn't something been done. We've been working our investigative case. For the majority of that, Mr. Knight hasn't been aware of our actions. Ultimately, we've been working a closed case like we would any other case. Mr. Knight was in the Bahamas, but that was irrelevant to the fact that we were working our investigation. We made notification to his attorney, and he was cooperative with returning himself to the United States.
What happens to his floating license? Is that already suspended?
Any judgments based on the actual case can be rendered at the end.
Did you guys have eyes on him the whole time while he was in the Bahamas? Because there was rumors that he might flee even further away, but you guys just...
Yeah, we were working our case, and once it was time to file those charges, we were effectively able to get them filed with an arrest yesterday, so I feel confident with that.
Can you explain the digital reconstruction? Like, were you able to recreate the collision that happened, and how's that planned?
So again, a lot of that's for courtroom testimony. I talked about it again when we were here 3 months ago. We map with a sophisticated laser system that makes data points all over the vessel, very similar to how car accidents are reconstructed, so that digitally those images can exist and we can kind of see how damage played out. I think I mentioned it the last time that fiberglass and these kind of metals move around different than cars do, so you want to be able to kind of lay that stuff out. What would it have looked like before? How did it kind of indent? What kind of flexibility was existing so that you can really place where people were and what would have happened in the accident, so we can explain the dynamics of the crash and understand what occurred.
Ms. Sternlight, is that a misdemeanor charge?
Yes, ma'am, that's a misdemeanor.
So outside of the 3 misdemeanors, 1 for the ferry, and then 2 for Knight for proper lookout and whatever the second
Safe
one.
speed.
Outside of those 3, which have to do with the actual collision when it happened and like who, I guess, guess, was at fault, or could any more charges stem from why the collision happened?
Yeah, currently, the charges we filed are what we're happy with in terms of the investigation being complete at this point. If the Pinellas County State Attorney's Office wants to make any additional information, they can, based on our entire chronology and investigative report that was submitted. But the charges we recommended are what we talked about today.
Can you explain to our viewers who, when we go back to the timing of an investigation, and, a lot of this through videos that we saw, through what we heard after the crash, and whether he left or whether he didn't leave, people wondering at home, why evidence matters, and when it all comes into play, how it's going to come into play for the courtroom. Can you explain why it matters that you guys have sufficient evidence before making these arrests and how that takes time?
Absolutely. So ultimately, we wanted to, if there was a violation, and we said this at the onset, if there was a violation determined, we were dedicated to making sure that we filed whatever was appropriate. There were victims involved. Individual lost his life. We've been in contact with those families and those victims and understood their concerns and their needs. And we wanted to make sure that a case that we brought forward would be legally binding, but also would be based on facts itself. It's easy to move with emotion, unfortunately. It's a tragic case that someone had died, but we wanted to bring forward the case that was based on facts, that was supported by evidence that we could stand behind, and that's what we filed and what we've brought based on this arrest as of yesterday.
During this investigation, were you able to determine how fast Mr. Knight was going?
Yeah, so some of that will be kind of pieced out in the actual litigation piece of it, but all that would be in the GPS analysis that we don't need to necessarily cover line by line.
You said his radar was not working. Is he required on that vessel?
No radar is ultimately required on recreational vessels, but it's a piece of lookout material, and it's part of what we would do in a functionality test. So
So was there
vessel
sufficient
homicide
evidence
considered a charge?
about how fast he was going in regards to reckless boating, or did you not have sufficient evidence to bring a charge regarding?
no, so we brought that charge of safe speed because the navigation rule that governs safe speed says that you should be traveling at a safe speed to avoid or attend to a risk of collision. And based on the fact that a collision did occur, that navigation rule was violated.
This kind of is an example of why we should be less reckless on the waterways. That's a statement that the family gave to us earlier. They said they hope that this will prevent other people from doing anything like this. Can you also speak to that? Do you think that there will be changes on the waterways? Maybe people will think twice before speeding or drinking. I mean, I know that wasn't the case here, but just being safer on the waterways.
We appreciate the support of the family. They've been in contact with us. The statement they put out speaks for itself. They're dealing with a loss in their family, and hopefully these charges help bring them just a little bit of closure. So with that, I'll give Ben Lang a chance if he wants to make any statements from the State Attorney's Office, and then we'll probably close it from there.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll take any questions.
Was vessel homicide considered as a charge?
So we're confident in the charges that we've brought forward. We have a very good working relationship with Florida Fish and Wildlife, and that plays into the time that we've spent over the past 3 months looking into everything. We take time to compare facts and put them towards the law. We don't make emotional decisions at the office, so that's why we have the charges that we have here.
Are you guys looking at charges for any of the other people on Knight's boat? I know there are 5 others.
As of right now, this is what we brought forward.
Mr. Knight has a history related to incidents on the water. In looking at the totality of the case, was there any evidence to suggest to you that maybe he shouldn't have had a boating license and been out there to begin with?
I don't have any information on that. We're aware of the prior incidents, but again, this is a separate case, and this is what we're looking at and what we're working with.
So during this time, his license is not suspended. Does that mean that when he's bailed out, could he use his boat again, or could he operate another?
My understanding is a condition of his bond was that he was not to operate any vessels.
Will you ask him to surrender his passport?
I'm not going to comment on anything outside of that.
And now that he is on bond, what is next? Is he going to have an ankle monitor, or does he have to be on house arrest, or no?
That would be up to the judge. Right now, the next step would be his first appearance at arraignment.
Can you just speak to the arrest? What does it mean for you guys to know that this man has been arrested, is facing charges for this incident that left one person dead and several others injured?
Well, obviously, this was a very tragic case that occurred, and we've taken the time over the past 3 months to look at everything, not make any emotional choices or reactions, look at the evidence, look at the facts, compare everything to the laws that we have, and that's how we've gotten to where we are today. Obviously, we are happy with the position that we're in, and we're confident with the charges that we're bringing forward. Mr. Knight was ultimately cooperative and did come back from the Bahamas, and so now we're starting the next leg of the case.
In terms of the next part of the case, are you looking to litigate this to trial? Are you looking to plead this out? What's your next steps?
So ultimately, we'd be going forward. We're filing charges. We have 8 counts of leaving the scene, and that's what we'll be going forward on, and how that plays out, we'll have to see.
Thank you, guys. That's all the time we have.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.